We're here at the Shoals Marriott today on the Walk of Honor in front of the W.C. Handy Monument. W.C. Handy's father, Charles Bernard Handy, Reverend Charles Bernard Handy, who was born at Spring Hill in 1848 as a slave, came to Florence with William Handy and his second wife and several of Charles's brothers and sisters that were probably also born on the McKiernan plantation. Like his father before him, Charles Bernard Handy was also an ordained pastor in the African Methodist Episcopal Church in Florence. The Handys were affiliated with what is now Greater St. Paul AME Church, but what was founded in around 1839-1840 as Church Springs Methodist Episcopal Church. It was on the corner of South Bluff and Court, or excuse me, it was on the corner of South Court and Bluff Streets. And Church Springs Methodist Episcopal Church moved to the corner of Court and Alabama Streets into the old Fant wool factory warehouse around 1878 and officially affiliated with the African Methodist Episcopal Church denomination of churches, which was an offshoot of primarily slaves from the Methodist Church. They had a separate communion for slaves, and it morphed into the African Methodist Episcopal Church. So Reverend Handy was ordained into that church, and his first pastorate seems to have been a church in Guntersville, where he was sent in 1900. So while Handy was here, he didn't pastor Church Springs / St. Paul ME Church, but he was affiliated with it. He was a minister and a representative of the Methodist Church to the Florence Times, a local newspaper. And his first official post, as I said, probably was a church in Guntersville. Well, as you can probably tell from the noise and excitement, the splash pad is just in front of me, off camera. You can't see it, but you can probably hear it. So just in case you're wondering what all that background noise is with the kids whooping and hollering, we're at the splash pad. I'd like to talk a little bit about W.C. Handy's mother. We've already said that she had a fondness for guitar but couldn't play. Handy mentions her a little bit in his autobiography, but even with both of his parents, he doesn't really say a whole lot about them. We have to fill in the details from other sources. Well, one of those sources that we have to fill in the blanks for is Mrs. Handy's funeral, which, if I'm correct, W.C. Handy doesn't mention in his autobiography, Follow the Blues, which he wrote in 1941. But we know from the Florence Herald and the Florence Times newspapers was heavily attended by mourners, white and black. And the Florence Herald newspaper, she died in August of 1895, and according to the Florence Herald newspaper, there were so many mourners at the funeral in the old Fant wool factory warehouse building that Church Springs ME Church, or at that time St. Paul AME Church, was using as a church building, that sleepers under the floor collapsed and it dropped the mourners 6 feet down into the basement. The elders of the church had already been contemplating building a new building because the one they were in they knew was old and wearing out. So this just spurred their desire to move into a new building. They had no choice at this point. But it was at W.C. Handy's mother Elizabeth's funeral that there were so many people in the church that it made the floor collapse. So a very respected lady. The whole Handy family and Brewer families were respected in Florence, Lauderdale. They were doing their thing at a time when Jim Crow and segregation still obtained everywhere, but in particular in the South. And they managed to maintain and keep the goodwill of members of both races. They were a very respected family.
Well, that was our video for today. So from all of us here, bye-bye everybody.